Supporters in Kenosha, Wisconsin are calling on authorities to free Chrystul Kizer, an accused killer. They say Kizer is a victim of human trafficking. They want the district attorney to drop murder charges against her. Kizer says she was defending herself when she shot and killed 34-year-old Randall Volar and set his house on fire in June of 2018. Kizer was just 17 years old at the time. Randy Volar was charged with child sex abuse and was out on bail at the time of his death. Kizer's mother says the prosecutor knew about Volar's alleged activities, but did nothing to stop him.
He had evidence. The fact that it took for her to do something because she got tired of it. And he trying to sweep the whole problem under the rug, but it's so much more bigger than just her.
But District Attorney Michael Gravely says Kizer killed Volar because she wanted to steal his car and then bragged about the killing on social media.
Where she is essentially bragging on a Facebook Live sort of telecast. She has a gun in her hand, she's waving that gun in her hand, and she is discussing how if somebody makes her mad, she'll shoot them like she shot someone previously, and there are people there trying to quiet her down.
Kizer's case has gained national attention, with celebrities like Alyssa Milano and Patricia Arquette calling for her release. Kizer's case is reminiscent of the Cyntoia Brown case in Tennessee, which also garnered a lot of attention. Brown was a victim of child sex trafficking. She was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison for murdering a man in 2004. He allegedly bought her for sex when she was 16 years old.
I've been able to help people, which is amazing. Young people, young kids, they listen. And I know it's purely an act of mercy that you've even given me a hearing.
Brown was granted clemency by then Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam after serving 15 years. She was released in August of 2019. Kizer faces life in prison if she's convicted of murder and arson.
My only thing is I want my child home, and it's messed up how everything happened.
In June, Chrystul Kizer was released. $400,000 raised by a community group that got the money together and got her released pending her trial. But she's still facing those murder charges. I want to bring in from Okemos, Michigan, trial attorney Jamie White, who's represented a lot of victims through the years. Jamie, how do you see this? Do you see Chrystul Kizer as a victim here?
There's no question that she was a victim. At the age of 16 years old, she was prostituted and abused by this man. And I think we probably only know barely the scope of it. So to say she's not a victim is I don't think that any reasonable person would dispute that. I think the real question is, did her experiences allow legally for her behavior to be acceptable? Her behavior in particular as to what your segment alluded to, that she allegedly killed this man who perpetrated these crimes against her. So that's where we are, Vinny. And I think that we're going to probably be dealing with a groundbreaking decision in this case. The state of Wisconsin, as well as 30 other states, decided that if someone is trafficked as a child, abused as a child, that would be an affirmative defense to any actions they take that are related to that behavior that was perpetrated upon them. And here we clearly have that. This woman, I don't think anybody is disputing that she was a victim at the hands of this man. The only question is whether or not there was enough of a nexus between his demise, his killing, and his behavior that one can conclude that somehow she's not responsible. And I think the state of Wisconsin has spoken very loudly that she is not.
Now, when you look at what the prosecutor is saying, and it seems a lot of reliance is going to be on this Facebook Live video where she's waving the gun, sort of bragging, and had taken the car from the man who was shot. You kind of put those together, and they're looking at it there. If a jury is presented with that, plus the backstory of this sex trafficking, how does a jury reconcile that?
I think that's a fair question, but I think it's one that is probably going to be taken out of context by the prosecution. the reason that the reason Wisconsin and 29 other states put this law in place is because young children are not acting rationally when they've been victims of sex abuse. And this idea that we're going to forgive the most, extraordinary behavior, the killing, because of the abuse they suffered, but somehow not take into consideration that their behavior after the fact on social media would not be consistent with that understanding is just troubling to me. I think that, her behavior and anybody's behavior going beyond the killing or the retribution for the assault, is extremely understandable. So, I mean, the jury, of course, is going to have a little bit of more meat on their plate when it comes to her behavior after the fact. But I would suggest to you and your listeners that this is very consistent with what the legislature, thought of when they said that this behavior will be excusable.
So she's so young, right? And that's a big part of the case and what has happened to her. Ultimately, if she is found not guilty, do you think she has any semblance of a normal life?
It's going to be a challenge for this young woman. Victims of sexual assault, to her credit, most victims of sexual assault don't do anything about their circumstances for, the average is the age of 35. This young woman reached out in an extraordinarily unfortunate way, but reached out nonetheless and did something about her abuse. So I would say that she is ahead of a lot of her fellow victims in this regard. But, it's going to be a challenge, Vinny. And I think that the fact that she committed this act and killed this gentleman and burned him and so on, or it's going to add to her trauma. So, her challenges are going to be voluminous. With that said, the community of Illinois has reached out. They've bonded her out. They came up with $400,000. Clearly, that community, that state, and certain organizations are very aware of the challenges that she is going to be dealing with. And I suspect that they'll be behind her going forward.
Jamie White, I'm so glad that we were able to have you on tonight. Your insight is really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinny.
And we're going to continue to track this one. We've got a status hearing on December 11th coming up, and perhaps on the 11th we'll get the trial date for this.